What's up, everybody? Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined by vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, and songwriter Jacob Bunton. Jacob is the featured vocalist on the new Mick Mars album, The Other Side of Mars. Oh, man, but that's just touching the tip of the iceberg. His resume is incredible. He was in a band called Adler with Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses. He was in a band called Linum. He was in a band called Mars Electra. He's written a number of pop songs for artists that you've heard of, and he was too humble to talk about it. But
Neon Coven.
Yeah, Neon Coven. He was in a band called Neon Coven. Still is. In fact, he played a show recently. And what a great guy, man. Very humble. Very grateful for his success, and he tells us that he does not do interviews. We're one of only about 3 or 4 that he's doing, and so we feel really grateful to have him on our show today.
Yeah, he is only mysterious because of how humble he is, because he admits to us some reasons why. He has a very interesting story. I mean, there's millions of people that have a similar upbringing that he has. It's not, it's quite normal where he comes from. But we'll let him use his words to tell his story. And it's not long-winded. He does bring it up a few times, just about how he was very open to tell his story about growing up and how he got his first guitar and how the rest kind of was history. But it's, once again, not to dumb it down at all, but it's fairly common, the story he tells. But obviously has done very well. And it's only because of his passion for what he does. And that is what and we talk about it. We get chummy in this episode today. I met Jacob on, I believe the first cruise that I did was called Shipwrocked, and not the Monsters of Rock. It was Shipwrocked, and that's the first time I believe that I met Jacob and his band Linum. And I learned more about Linum today than I did, and I've seen Linum play a few times on the fucking ship. So I learned more about Linum today than I even knew ever, and that was a long time ago now.
Yeah.
But just from afar, being able to admire my friend Jacob and find out these things just via the grapevine, how actually successful the guy has been, and just not even. There's no change in he looks exactly the same the day that I met him. His demeanor, his love and passion for all things music, as I think the reason why he has stayed the same is because that has never wavered. That one thing about music that, when you hear something and you fall in love with it, that's his beacon, that's his lighthouse, that's his savior.
He was great, very humble, very funny. Some of those you mentioned Linum, some of the stories about Linum were hilarious,
which I just mentioned, I didn't even know that. And now David Linum, the guy the band was named after, apparently was this horrible drummer who got really badass, and now he's a comedian. With the stories Jacob told us today about David Linum was, but he should be a comedian because maybe he'd break out a drum kit and do his own rim shots.
Well, Jacob is insanely talented. He was a little too humble to go into all of his credits, but you can look him up. I went into this thinking, wow, he's on the Mick Mars record. That's the biggest opportunity of his lifetime. And with all due respect to Mick, Jacob's been around. He's done some pretty incredible things and some amazing things. He's one of those guys that, just like all of us, one day when we were kids, we decided we wanted to be rock stars. And some of us make it and most of us don't, but he's one of those guys that could make a very comfortable living, I imagine, doing the behind the scenes stuff because he's an amazing songwriter. He plays every instrument you can
That's
throw
his
at
day
him.
job.
Yeah, that's what he does.
You just described his day job.
Yeah.
That's his day job.
That's what I'm saying. It's like if he never got on stage again, he would be doing just fine in the world of music because he's insanely talented. So
well, and not to rub it in and do, say it again, but thousands of people are watching movies with Jacob's music blaring in the background over the dialogue.
Yeah, you just don't
right
know.
Now.
Yeah.
So just so you know, everybody out there in music world, you're surrounded by Jacob Bunton and you didn't know it. Today, tonight, and here now, rare appearances. Here, Jacob Bunton on the Talk Louder podcast. Man, we're doing great. You're back in Alabama.
Yes.
Do you keep a homestead there?
Yeah. So I have a place in California and a place in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in Birmingham?
Yeah, Birmingham, the big city.
Yeah. I used to live in Tuscaloosa and then in Montgomery.
Oh, that's cool, man. Where are you now?
I'm in Austin.
Okay. Yeah. What took you to Austin from Alabama?
Well, it wasn't a direct route. Basically, my dad was in the military, so we bounced around quite a bit. So when I lived in Tuscaloosa, I was too young to remember. When I lived in Montgomery, I was in ninth grade, and we were only there for a year. But I was old enough, obviously, to remember. So I do remember my time there. And then we moved to San Antonio and then on to Austin. So
he's a Texan.
I'm a native Texan. I just moved around a lot in
pretty
between.
much a Texan. So
yeah,
that's cool. I lived in Texas when I was a kid. I went to elementary school in Texas. I started out in Galveston, Texas, and then Houston, Texas, and then Pasadena, Texas, and then eventually back to Alabama.
I spent 2 years in Galveston before this trip to Austin. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Galveston is where I developed my fear of the ocean because I almost drowned right off seawall.
Oh shit!
Wow.
No fun. I have cousins that Pasadena. You say Pasadena, I know all about that. I have relatives that pretty much grew up there. My family's from the Gulf Coast anyway. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not. That's cool.
Yeah. Have you met Dave before? Have you met this guy before?
No, we've never met. We do have a mutual friend in common, though. Johnny Martin is a friend of mine, and I know you've spent a lot of time with him. And then me and Ace Von Johnson are acquaintances. I would say I'm much closer with Johnny, but I know both those guys, and I know you've been in bands with each of them, and that's on my list of things to ask you about today. But it's nice to meet you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to meet you too, man. Any friend of Johnny Martin's is a friend of mine, dude. You just named two of my favorite people. So
yeah. Those guys are kind of
great.
Still to this day, kind of unsung heroes, and they've actually been big supporters of Dave and I. So
yeah, love those guys.
That's killer.
Well, man, I was looking at your doing a little research, and I was gonna say this Mick Mars thing I was thinking is probably the biggest opportunity you've ever had. But holy crap, man, your resume is full of big names and a lot of accomplishments, and I do want to get to as much as we can, but let's start with the gorilla in the room, the whole Mick Mars album. By the time this episode airs, the album will be out 5 days. So how did you meet Mick prior to being involved in this album?
So I was always a Motley fan growing up and all that, just like all of us are. And Paul Taylor was actually involved in it early on. Paul Taylor, the great songwriter, keyboardist, guitarist, extraordinaire.
Yeah.
The Wizard.
Michael Wagner had, yeah.
Yeah.
Winger, yeah.
The
From
Wizard.
here.
The Wizard of
The
Winger.
Wizard.
Yeah, he is the
Yeah,
Wizard.
yeah. So Michael Wagner had brought him in to the project because Mick had been working on it forever. I think something like 5 years. He had gone through a bunch of singers, a bunch of, different people trying to put it together. And I think he had gone through like 5 singers before me. And when Paul was asking him, well, what are you looking for? Paul called me and he said, man, Mick just described you. Like what he's looking for, like the voice and all of that. And I was like, all right, cool. And so I went to Mick's house and I met him and Michael Wagner there and Paul. And and we just kind of started writing and went from there and it worked out. Just like everybody, when Mick first announced a solo thing, John Corabi was on board. I was just as excited as everybody else. It's like, oh my God, it's going to be another album like that Motley record, that self-titled Motley record. Yeah. And and for whatever reason that didn't come about. But man, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and I was looking at the album because I was kind of curious to know how much of this was Mick basically handing out orders and how much of it was sort of a democracy. I know with Paul Taylor, of course, you've got an amazing musician and a great talent, and I think Mick would respect that. And you yourself bring a lot to the table. And so, looking at the credits, I realized that you're all over this record. So it sounds to me like Mick was pretty receptive to the ideas that the rest of you guys were bringing to the table. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Mick is like the king of riffs. Like he just has all these riffs, just loads and loads and loads of riffs, and they're all amazing. And he was playing some really heavy stuff that, kind of was reminiscent of that Motley record that I referenced, the one that Corabi's on. And some stuff even heavier than that. And so it was a lot of fun to collaborate on. But Paul, myself, and Mick, we all 3 of us wrote the record.
Yeah, that's amazing because a guy, a lot of people from the outside might think that, Mick Mars being the big name that he is, he's kind of calling all the shots and telling you guys what to do, and that's just the way it is. But it looks on the credits, at least, like very much a democracy. So was there any time when during the process when Mick was saying, whatever you do, don't do anything that sounds like Motley Crue, or was the field wide open? Is a good song is a good song kind of thing?
Before I ever stepped foot in his house, like I'd already heard that, he didn't want to do something that sounded like Motley Crue because he had done that for 41 years or however long it was. Man, he wanted to do something that was different, and it was a democracy as far as the songwriting goes and all of that. But make no mistake, it's Mick's record. Like he final call on everything, and some things he would be like no, and even if it was something that was like, oh man, this would be so cool. At the end of the day, you have to respect that it's his record, it's his vision. He's calling all the shots. He's, it's his thing, his project. We're just on board, and like I said, happy to be on it. Ray Luzier, the drummer for Korn's the drummer, and like that dude is just amazing. Like watching him do his drum tracks was just like next level. It's just amazing.
I love that I can sense that you have such a fan's enthusiasm for this, even after all your years and experience in the business. We have guests on the show a lot of times, and you can sense they're still every bit the fan, and they're still super eager to be part of it. They're not jaded or anything, and I can really feel that vibe coming off.
Yeah, if I may jump in and say, that's the vibe I've always gotten from this guy sitting with us today. And just, I'll say it in front of you, Jacob. You're cool as ice, man. You've always been respectable and all that, and you're just nice to people, but you're also a fan who's just up in the middle of whatever you are, whatever you about rock and roll that you fell in love with is the first thing that you want to talk about. And that's just a real fan. And I feel like that's why you and me and the Toys guys have always gotten along so well. Is from the day we met you, it was just, you were just easy peasy, just super easy to run into and hang for a bit. And it's almost like cut from the same cloth. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that, man, because you are obviously huge music fan. You know everything about every genre, from thrash metal to rock to classic rock to, like, you name it, which I love. And it's like that's why we all got into it, is just our love of music. There's so many people out there that think that the reason that we get into music is all about pussy or something, and it's just not. It's about the music, and it's just such an amazing thing, man. It's like, I grew up really poor with a single mom, and it's like music was the escape. Like, watching the videos on MTV, listening to the radio, it's like that was the escape, and that was the dream, and that's like, hey, I want to do that.
Yeah. I want to echo something Jason just said. And, again, we've never met until today. But I do know that you seem to have you're universally regarded as a really chill dude and a consummate professional. And I can understand why you've had some of the opportunities you've had, if you've got that sort of reputation that just sort of precedes you. So good on you for taking it seriously and being a pro about it. And, as long as you continue doing those things, these kinds of opportunities will come along.
For the record, I got into rock and roll before I knew what pussy was. So eat
Perfect.
Yeah.
Me
it
too.
ain't about that. It's about the way that it made me feel when it went into my ears.
Yeah. And Jason, I don't know if I ever told you the story. I'm going to tell you on the show.
Okay.
One of my best friends that is a lifelong best friend, first day of school when I was a kid, I was nervous as hell. I just moved. I didn't know anybody. So I walked in, homeroom, the first subject or whatever at 9 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. I don't remember if we did school at 8 or 9. I can't even remember. But I didn't know anybody. I was nervous as hell. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make friends here or whatever. One of my best friends this day is a guy named Jimmy Adderhold. He ended up being my guitar tech after we got record deals, and just always remained friends. When I walked into homeroom, I sat behind a guy, and I could read the back of his shirt, and it said "Sporting a Woody." And I was like, dude, you're a Toys man. He turned around, and the big ass clown and everything. And so instantly I'd found my tribe. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a guy wearing a Motorhead shirt for me.
Yeah.
The same situation. I just moved, and you're looking for your people, and you don't know anybody, and it's day one, and you walk into the cafeteria or whatever, and there's one headbanger wearing a fucking Motorhead shirt. That's my people. Beeline right to it, never left. And Dave, I'm talking about Mike Solis, of course.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So that situation, that's a classic story, and it's kind of something that we visit quite often on this podcast, is about how how it's just something as silly as a concert t-shirt or a button on your jacket or a cap that you're wearing, or it could almost be the boots you walk in, where you're just going, damn, all right, I know this guy is into some same shit that I'm into.
Yeah.
It changes. The only level of fierceness that changes is how old you are at the time that story that it may apply. Because I went to a Catholic school in like 7th and 8th grade or something. I'm not Catholic, but so it was kind of this, you had to pay tuition to go. It was convenient. It was across the street from my house at the time. And there was not a dress code, but they wouldn't let me wear my KISS t-shirts, in which I had a plenty. I had one for every day of the fucking week. And they did not like me wearing KISS t-shirts to Catholic school. So my friends were far and few between, but the times that I did get away with wearing my KISS t-shirt collection, that's how I met the people that I still call friends today. So it's very similar. I appreciate you sharing me that. Jimmy still around?
Yeah. Jimmy's still around, man.
Hi, Jimmy. Shout out to Jimmy, man.
My oldest friend.
Awesome.
He's still sporting a Woody too.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
So Jacob, tell us something about Mick Mars that we may not know about. What about his personality did you discover once you started working with him closely? Is there anything that you didn't know about him that you got to know because you're collaborating?
Yeah, absolutely. Because anytime you see something with Motley, it's like Tommy was always in the press and Nicky's in the press. And, Vince did the reality show at one point where they all are in a house together and, thing. So it's like you knew stuff about the other guys in Motley, and the interviews with Tommy and Nicky, they were always over the top. So there's so much information out there about those guys. With Mick, there's not a lot of information about him. And interviews, even for full band interviews, he was the one that was always really quiet, didn't really say much. And then when you would watch videos like Home Sweet Home, the very beginning of it, it's that whole satanic scene where he's like, where they're all like, dude, I'm on my way. And Mick's like, with his voice pitched down, he's like, I'm on my way, sitting inside the chair with the pentagram and stuff. So he was always the like really scary, like, oh man, I bet this dude's a devil worshiper or something, And when you meet him, the thing that's absolutely nuts is how funny he is. He is the funniest guy in the world, always cracking jokes, super sharp, super quick. And I mean, if he wouldn't have been a guitar player, he could have been a comedian. He's so funny. So that's something that, that takes you by surprise when you actually get to know him and become friends with him.
Yeah, that's exactly why I asked. You nailed it, because we all know so much about Nicky and Tommy and Vince, and Mick has always been the quiet one. So that's why I wanted to ask you, because you're on the inside, you're on the inner circle now and actually working with the man. So, I'm just curious to know if anything struck you as interesting based on your perception prior to working with him.
Yeah, man, he was always the man shrouded in mystery. He was always the person that there wasn't a lot of information out there on. I mean, forever, nobody even knew his age. Nobody, it's like before Wikipedia and all that stuff. It's like everybody knew that he was the, like the oldest guy in the band, but nobody knew anything about this guy.
Yeah. Now that
he's my favorite guy in Motley, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He's a riff monster. And he was the heavy. He was what made that. I'm not telling you guys shit, but he's kind of the guy when Motley got heavy, it was because of what Mick was doing, not because of what anybody else was doing.
Yeah. So, now that this album is out, by the time this show airs, it's out for a few days, The Other Side of Mars. Obviously you guys are really proud of it. But what are the odds of us getting any shows out of this? Because we all know Mick, one of the reasons he stepped aside is because he's kind of, his health isn't conducive to a lot of long-term touring. That I understand, but would there be any shows, here and there kind of thing? Or what are you going to do for live performance, if anything?
Yeah, that's completely up to Mick and his health and how he feels and all of that, it's like, and it also depends on if I could take time off to go do it, because my main job is I'm a pop writer. So like I'm always writing for pop artists or scoring movies or whatever. So it just depends on if and then Ray being in Korn and Paul being in Winger. It's like if it was going to be that lineup, just the stars would kind of have to align. All I know is the same as what you guys know is, what he's mentioned in interviews, that he has no desire to tour, but if there's interest and somebody wants to do like some one-offs or something like that, he's up for it. And I'm sure that we could all find time to do it. It would be a lot of fun to go do it, but ultimately it's up to him.
Yeah.
I think it would end up being very celebratory and probably healthy for him as well as fans that might miss him, because I think, yeah, man. And I think the record is going to surprise folks. And I think it's going to be something that is uplifting for people that miss him. So a lot of people are going to want to see that shit live at least once,
Yeah.
You got to celebrate that somehow in a live aspect. Let's talk about your day job. You just mentioned it. Let's talk about prior to that. When I first met you, and we don't have to go long on this at all, you were fronting Lineham. Tell us about Lineham, how that got going, how that sort of might have been something that got you to a level to where you were, meeting more people that would launch you into where you are now, maybe.
Yeah, it really all started with a band that was pre-Lineham called Mars Electric.
Okay.
And Mars Electric was my first band that got signed to a major label. We started out on Atlantic, and then we, same story that happens to a lot of people, get dropped before the record even comes out. And then John Kolodner signed us to Columbia. And obviously I'd always known who John Kolodner is, being a massive fan of rock and roll. It's the dude that signed Whitesnake, the dude that signed, he signed so many like legendary bands, Aerosmith, all that. So when he was interested and flew to Alabama and watched us play and gave us a record deal, that's kind of like when everything took off, because Kolodner encouraged me to write, just constantly write. He was like, man, you have a great sense of melody, and you should write songs. Even if your band doesn't end up cutting them, you should just write songs. And he encouraged me to write for other people and all of that. And then the other person that did the same thing was Randy Jackson, because Randy was the senior vice president of Columbia Records. And that's a really long story, but I wouldn't be where I am today without Randy. And so Randy and Kolodner both, they were very encouraging about writing songs, and for myself, for other people, whatever. So I was kind of already in that world a little bit after Mars Electric broke up and we started Lineham. And with Mars Electric, I felt like we were a really great band, a great live band, and all of that stuff. All of our personalities didn't necessarily mesh. But with Lineham, it was completely different. We were a fucking horrible band, but we had so much fun. And our personalities were like every day, all we did was laugh and had so much fun. And it's like, when I met David, the drummer, he was more of a mascot than a drummer. He was that annoying guy that would be at the front of the stage when every cover band would play, and he'd be like, man, let me play Bon Jovi, or let me play Pour Some Sugar on Me. And bands would let him get up on stage, and like he couldn't even play Pour Some Sugar on Me. It was awful. Like it was a train wreck every time he got up on stage. And his name is David Lineham. When I met him and we became friends, he's like, yo, man, I'm doing this thing. Can you come sing for me at this club? And Mars Electric had just broken up. And I'm like, yeah. And so he sent me over a set list. It was a cover gig. We went and played, and it was a train wreck how horrible this guy is. It's like you've never heard somebody play drums so bad. We had so much fun. We started booking other shows, cover shows, and like I said, we just never stopped laughing. And we named the band Lynham because he was so bad, and everybody knew he was bad, and everybody around town, like when they saw that the name of the band was Lynham, they're like, David Lynham, that awful drummer. It's like, holy shit, he's got a band named after him. But what happened was, after playing we were playing 6 and 7 nights a week, and we were doing frat parties, sorority parties, bar gigs, just playing covers, all end of the spectrum, and writing originals. He got good just from playing over and over and over and over and over again. He got really, really good to where the band eventually got to a point where we were I hate to say this, but if you're a musician, like, okay, if you came to our show and you were blind, we would be the shittiest band you've ever heard. But as long as you could hear with your eyes, we were like one of the greatest bands, because like we had like just the stage show was just awesome. But like I said, we just had so much fun. And so Lynham, to this day, we've never broken up. We're all best friends. We just rarely play gigs anymore because everybody's doing different things. David is now a comedian. He's focusing full time on comedy. And
Nice.
Mark, the bass player, he left the band originally because he got the role in that Tom Cruise movie, Rock of Ages. So he's the bass player in Arsenal. Wow. And then I just got so busy with songwriting, and then got into the film composing world and started scoring movies. And yeah, man. And so that's the story. That's how everything happened.
It's awesome. I noticed in one of the, I think it's the Lynham video, you're wearing a Fastway shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that, because I thought that was cool. You don't see a Fastway shirt every day, especially the all fired up shirt.
Man, I loved Fastway. I love Dave King. I love his vocals. Yeah. Anybody that could do something with their voice that I couldn't, it's like, that's why I was such a fan of Jason's band, because it's like Jason could sound like a song like Scared, where it's like non-falsetto, just like a regular kind of lower range or whatever. It's still sounded rock and roll, sounded cool. But then all of a sudden he could turn around and sound like Janis Joplin, like literally. And it's like, holy shit. I've always loved singers that can do what I can't do. And I've always tried to do that. And Dave King was one of those guys that just had, the typical drink whiskey and razor blade type voice when he wanted to like get really gritty like that. And yeah, so Fastway was just always a band that I just loved so much. And yeah, and a friend of mine found that Fastway shirt. It was an old tour shirt, and he bought it from somebody for like $5. And he gave it to me because he knew that I love Fastway so much. So
that's awesome.
Wow,
awesome.
He got a good deal on an original tour shirt for $5.
Yes,
sir. Those vintage prices on eBay, and that shit's collectors.
That's what caught my eye. I saw it and I was like, whoa, that's a Fastway shirt. And then I was eyeballing it and I was like, whoa, that's an all fired up Fastway shirt. That's even probably a little more rarer than the checkerboard,
And an original.
Yep. I saw, I got my second concert was Fastway opened for Saxon and Iron Maiden. So I got to see them with Dave.
Amazing.
On their first tour, and it was awesome.
I was there, Hemisphere Arena.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's crazy is me being such a huge fan of Fastway, and in particular Dave King. Years later, a buddy of mine tells me to come see this band, this called Flogging Molly. This like a drinking band, Irish band or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, they're a punk band. And so I go to the music hall, which is the local venue at in Birmingham, and I watch this show, and they are so freaking great. And my buddy Greg, he's like, well, come back and say hello to the band because I'm friends with them. And I was like, I'm going to go get some food. I was hungry. And, and I'm thinking, punk band, whatever. The next day, I found out that the short-haired, red-haired guy on stage that's the singer is Dave King from Fastway. He just looks completely different now, sings completely different, plays completely different music. And I was like, holy shit, I would have loved to have met him. I was like, I had no idea that he was in Fastway. And my friend was like, well, I didn't either. Then another friend of mine says, dude, he would not have wanted to talk Fastway with you. That's like so far behind him. He would probably have stopped talking to you and walked away.
I've heard,
like, oh man,
I've heard similar stories about that, about Dave just not wanting to talk 80s hard rock with you at all. I think because mainly he was discovering himself around those early years, and I believe he was so young when he was working with Fast Eddie. Fast Eddie just found him and picked him and kind of molded him into this, and he probably said, yes, sir. I mean, I don't know. Don't mark my words. I'm not I don't know everything about Dave King, but I felt the same way, as a budding singer and just trying to pick up. I mean, Say What You Will came on the radio, it was a new song when it, and I was hearing it on the radio and I was like, that singer is fucking great. Some shit going on right there.
Absolutely.
And it was immediately recognizable, but I wanted to get into it because I was already a Motorhead fan, but I heard, the Boogie Woogie, and I heard that, Dave King just sing his ass off, and I'm like, holy shit. But yeah, when you hear the Flogging Molly stuff, they're fucking killing it.
Absolutely.
And if you're a Dave King fan, you can tell that it's Dave King, but if you're not looking for it, it'll go right over your head because it's like super fast folk, Irish folk, Scottish folk music or something, but it's more of like done like a ska kind of a thing or something.
Yeah, and a Dropkick Murphys type of vibe and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just like, just it went over my head. Like I knew that the dude had a cool voice when I saw him.
Yeah.
And there was some familiarity about it, but it never dawned on me that it was actually Dave King.
That's pretty awesome.
And I just always loved those singers that had that type of voice. To me, it's always been easier for me to sing on the clean side. Like I've always had a range, a low range and a high range and all that stuff, but it's easier for me to sing Iron Maiden songs or Journey songs or something like that than it would be to sing Teasin' Pleasin' or to sing an AC/DC song or to sing whatever. It's like, Jason, you remember like when I sang, because I think we at the end of the show we all did, but when I sang the Cinderella stuff, it's like it was more like super clean because that rasp. I've never been able to do that, and I've always respected people that can do that.
Well, it's really a cartoon voice, when you kind of think about what you're doing with your pipes when you kind of like, bend the folds or whatever to get that, grit. You throw a bunch of junk into the hallway, and it's not going to come out clean. I think that it's amazing that singers can even still have that grit and sing at all, because it sounds like they're gonna die. You know what I mean? When they have the crazy razor blade shit going on.
Yeah.
We just had Nigel Glockler from Saxon on, and we talked a little bit about Biff Byford's voice, and he's an older gent now. He's been doing it forever, and he's got more grit in his voice now, and his voice sounds cooler and better and stronger than ever, and he's into his 70s now. So it's very interesting, the human voice and what it is about that. It's interesting. Let's talk about this for a second, not to turn it into a workshop, but when you say you sing clean, it's easier for you to sing Journey. Just for the record, I suck at Journey. because there's a certain part of my range that when I get up to a certain place in my range where I have to sing on the break, it turns into like a third voice or something, and it's not a true voice. So I can sing Journey, but it's a tough one for me. And Bruce Dickinson is harder for me to sing, to emulate, than Paul Di'Anno, if that makes sense, for the same reason. And I can sing Rob Halford. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I'm very up and well versed in what Rob Halford does, because he has like 5 or 6 different voices. And again, not tooting my horn here, but so do I. And I know there might be a part of a song that's calling me, that's telling me to use, I need to go to the filing cabinet. Here's the voice that I need for this part of this song, because, when the dynamic is changing, I have these voices that I kind of go automatic to. If it's Journey, where it's just this sweet voice all the way through, and any part of your range, high, low, middle, whatever, I don't really have that. I have to go through, like I said, I have these voices that I use for that dynamic, if that makes sense. So
100%.
to sing clear all the time, that's something I struggle with. So it's interesting that, every singer has their own sort of footprint. So to sing Cinderella tunes in a clean voice, that's fine. There's only one Tom Kiefer.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That brings up an interesting point. So, Jacob, when you're singing on the Mick Mars record, your voice is obviously something very personal. And is there any direction from Mick at any point where he's like, that's too high, that's too low, don't sing like that, sing more like this? Or is he kind of letting you stay in your comfort zone, just respecting the fact that you're a singer and you know your limits and this is what you do?
No, he was really good about that. He just liked what I did, and which is cool. Because some stuff I would sing really low, some stuff I would sing really high. It just depends on the song. And I've got different voices. They just don't break up like that, like melodically. And what I mean by melodically is like someone like Tom Kiefer, or someone like Brian Johnson, or someone like Jason. It's like they can melodically break up their voice. So some of the stuff I'm doing on Mick's record is I'm singing, but it's almost like screamo. And it's like when people hear this record, they're really, really going to be surprised, because there's some really heavy shit on it. So it sounds like a mixture between like I'm freaking screaming, like almost screamo, and then going into this like Pantera 5-finger death punch type vocal or something, because I can get really angry like that. I just can't do Back in Black. You know what I mean? Like I can't break my voice up like that.
Yeah.
Well, your speaking voice is very deep, so I can imagine you being able to do some of that really gruff stuff. Like you referenced Pantera. That seems to me like it would come fairly natural, just given your speaking voice, and you're a trained singer, for God's sake. So yeah, I could see that.
Do you? So you do have some training? You have vocal training?
No,
I meant just out of experience.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Jacob.
So
I was about to freak out. I didn't know Jacob had gone to school for this shit. I thought he was from the wrong side of the tracks. And
no, I just meant that he's been doing it for a long time.
Well,
so
dude, we were so freaking poor, man, growing up. Like literally, like my last grade of school I completed is 7th grade. I'm a hillbilly from Alabama. I never went to school for anything, but
you turned out fucking perfect, bro. You're a great dude, and you don't need that. You don't need to be worried about that. But I'm so glad that you're here and doing the things that you got to do. You're obviously blessed, and so it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
I appreciate it. The amount of training that I had is when we first signed to Atlantic Records. Our A&R guy, his name was Kim Stevens, and me and the guitar player that sang harmony, we would go to Atlanta a few times and take vocal lessons from this lady that was awesome. She would she would just teach you how to not blow your voice out on the road once you're like singing every single night. And then the only other vocal lesson that I had was Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden. And that's something Collidner hooked up. Yeah, it's,
Wow.
he asked Bruce to he's like, I just signed this kid, just give him some vocal lessons and stuff. So it wasn't a thing like where I went over to his house once a week or something like that. It was a one-time thing.
Okay.
And we just talked about vocal stuff, and that was the most amazing advice I'd ever gotten, because he didn't hold up charts and show you what your vocal cords look like and all that stuff. He just explained it in layman terms. He's like, I fly planes. When we're not on tour and not making records and everything else, I'll go a really long time without singing. He goes, I'll fly planes and I'm not even thinking about it. When it's time for us to go on tour, I'll go downstairs, grab the vinyl, put on Number of the Beast. He said, I'll sing one song and then I'm done for that day. He said, the next day I'll come down and I'll do 2 songs. And then I'm done for the day. He said, the next day I'll come down and I'll do 4 songs. And he said, what you have to remember about your voice is it's a muscle. You have to use it, but not abuse it. And he said, think about a carpenter that doesn't have a nail gun, that uses a hammer and nails. Well, after 8 hours every single day, their hands have calluses all over them from the hammer and nails. And he said, so you don't want to overuse it like that, because the calluses on your vocal cords are nodes, and that's no good. So he says, build up to it, but make sure that you use it. And he said, pay attention to your body. It was all like layman term stuff that was just like, dude, that makes all the sense in the world. And so before we would go on tour, I took what he said to heart. Before we'd go do a tour or anything like that, we would write out our set list. I'd put on my headphones and I would jog, like either on a treadmill or just around my neighborhood, and I would sing the whole set, just running, because it was also about cardio and everything else. And once I got to the point where I could sing our whole, being an opening band in Mars Electric most of the time, it was 30-minute set. So once I could run for 30 minutes on the treadmill while singing full volume the songs, and I wasn't out of breath, then I knew we were going to be good. I knew the tour was going to go great and everything else. So that's the only vocal training I had, was just really advice.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
the only training you ever had, came from Bruce Dickinson. What a bummer.
Yeah, that's amazing that you were in a position to where, oh yeah, my buddy Bruce, hey, come on over here and talk to this guy. That is priceless.
Yeah.
One time or not. It wouldn't have been as cool if he became your sensei. Speaking of, the advice that he gave you is very Miyagi.
Yeah.
Very
really
Mr. Miyagi.
Running and singing and yeah.
Well, it was like the fortune cookie shit, the fortune cookie stuff, the calluses, one time, that's it. Well, yeah, my set is 30-minute, just one. He's kind of just telling you, you don't need to be the hero on day one. Your tour is weeks away. Build up kind of thing. Wax on, wax off. Why am I doing it like this? Right? Well, now you know. So that's cool.
Let's jump ahead from Lynham to Adler. I mean, that band had a lot of star power. You've got yourself, Steven Adler, Johnny Martin, and I think it was Lonnie Paul. I don't know if he was there from the start, but he was there. And you would think that Adler's going to draw a lot of attention, obviously, from Guns N' Roses. We had Johnny on the show, and I asked him, what was the undoing of that band? Because on paper, it looks like a recipe for success. In your opinion, why did that band not do better or reach a bigger audience?
Well, Steven would tell you that we had everything going for us. Like when the record came out, I think our first single came out around the time they were being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Steven was clean. He was working out He was going over to Lonnie's every day and working out, and he was so happy. Like, you'd never seen somebody so happy and at peace. This was the first thing that he had done outside of Guns N' Roses, like a big release. And we had what we all felt was an incredible record. And the day that we started our press campaign for the record, we had a whole day, like a press day that started at 8 o'clock in the morning LA time until, I mean, we were going to be doing it for like 12 or 14 hours of just nothing but interviews and everything. And our publicist dialed in, and we're all over at Lonnie's house sitting around the phone. And the very first interview that we did, I think it was with Rolling Stone, the guy said, "Hey, Steven, what are your thoughts on Axel and Izzy not coming to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?" And Steven said, "What?" He like it destroyed him. You'd never seen somebody, a look on somebody's face like that. He went from being so happy and so calm and so everything to like, literally we had to hang up the phone because he was saying some stuff. We had to hang up the phone and we had to cancel the rest of the tour date because it broke his heart, because he believed in all of his heart that those 5 guys that created, one of the most amazing records in rock and roll history would get on stage and do it one more time. And he was so excited about that. And so that was the catalyst to what kind of made him fall off the wagon a little bit and everything else. And and it's no secret. It's like, you can look all this stuff up. Our tours were canceled because of certain things, and him wanting to get better again, having to go into rehab and all that. And the good thing about the band Adler is I've never been drunk in my life. I've never drank. I've never done drugs. I've never done anything. Lonnie didn't drink or do drugs. Johnny didn't do drugs, and he wouldn't drink around Steven. And our road crew didn't drink or do drugs. And so, like, we were a great support team to him and a great support system to him. When the record came out, all of the reviews across the board were awesome. Everybody seemed to like really dig the record. VH1 Classics added the video. We went on that metal show, all that stuff. And it really seemed like everything was going great. But when we had to cancel those tours, we had to cancel the tour of the US, we had to cancel the European tour, we had to cancel all that stuff. And we took a break for about a year or 2. I don't even remember how long it was at this point. And when we came back, we weren't doing these full-fledged tours. We were just doing weekend dates just to kind of dip our toes in and all that. And Steven, was just like, what, this, I don't know if this is fun, because people would come to the show and we were doing the entire Adler record. And then for the encore, we would do 2 Guns N' Roses songs. So we'd pick different Guns N' Roses songs, and that would be the encore. But by the time that our very last show ever was at M3. And by the time we got to M3, the show was all Guns N' Roses songs with 1 Adler song. So it's like, he realized that it's very, very, very hard to introduce new music to existing fans that want to hear all of the classics and everything. So I think that's what it is. I didn't hear Johnny's answer to it, so I don't know what his answer was.
Yeah, Johnny basically said something similar. I point blank asked him if Steven's demons were an issue and if they had come back and sort of manifested themselves in that band, and if that was part of the derailment. And Johnny basically said, yeah, pretty much. And then that was sort of the end of the subject. I didn't want to pry any further. So I do appreciate you being so candid about that. I can just imagine, the attention that's on him, and, given his background and some of his history, That's got to be a lot of pressure, man.
He is so gracious with fans. Like, no matter what kind of mood he's in, no matter how tired he is, he never forgets the reason that he's able to do whatever the fuck he wants to do for the rest of his life and not have to worry about anything. He knows it's because of the fans. He is so gracious with everybody. He gives everybody a big hug. He'll sign anything that you want him to sign. He's just the greatest dude. And he's one of my favorite people in the world. It's like, I just talked to him last week. He's awesome. You know, he's doing so well. And he's back to doing what was Adler's Appetite, but now it's just Steven Adler, but he's playing the Guns N' Roses songs. The singer he has now will blow your fucking mind. He sounds just like Axel. His name is Ari. He's from Argentina. Sweetest guy in the world. And man, if you close your eyes, you would think it's Axel Rose in 1988. Like, he's amazing.
I think I saw them in Pittsburgh a couple years ago. Dirty Looks. I'm fronting Dirty Looks now, and we did a show in Pittsburgh, and man, I can't even remember how long ago. 2 years ago, maybe. And I'm pretty sure it was this Ari guy you're talking about, and it was pretty crazy how
Amazing.
How good the kid was. Did you know that I was up for like, I talked to Steven on the phone, like he was looking to get me involved at some point.
Yeah, like, I had no idea, but that's something that you could do with your eyes closed. You've got that range and that voice. You can make your voice break up like that. You'd totally be able to do that.
I think other people were telling Steven that you know, the same thing. And I think at the time, Tracy Guns was involved as well. But that was a fucking long time ago. I barely recall that. And I think somebody at Artists Worldwide would put us in touch to see about getting that going. But anyway, that's another story.
Tell me real quick how you met Johnny Martin, since we're on the topic of Adler.
Good one.
How'd you meet Johnny?
So after we did the Adler record, Jeff Pilson played bass on the Adler record, and he produced it. And talk about a dude that's insanely talented. Good Lord, man, that dude is insanely talented. We were looking for a bass player, and Lonnie knew Johnny. And Lonnie was having a party, and Steven went over to his house, and Johnny was there, and Johnny picked up the bass and started playing Rush. As soon as that's all you have to do with Steven, man. but Johnny's so incredible. He was playing the stuff note for note, and he goes, this dude can play Rush. He's like, you're in the band. And I think at the time Johnny was coming out of one of the versions of LA Guns at the time. So we were lucky enough for him to come on board and be a full-fledged band member. And, you know, and just what a guy, man. He's just amazing.
Yeah. He's a lot of fun. I met him when he was playing with Jesse Mallon at South by Southwest one year. And we got to talking after the show, and he said, you know, he goes, give me your phone number, your email address, or whatever. We should stay in touch. And I'm thinking, there's no way this guy's going to stay in touch with me. I'm just some guy that walked up to him after a show. And all these years later, we're still, you know, we text each other and send each other silly jokes. And I see him when he comes into town with LA Guns, and he's a great guy, man. He's been a really cool guy.
He's the dude at the party that played Rush on a bass in the corner.
Yeah.
That's exactly who he is. He's amazing.
I love it.
Tell us about Neon Coven. That's something you did with Ace Von Johnson, speaking of LA Guns. And it is you know, if people are thinking that because Ace is involved, it's going to either have a punk rock background or it's going to have some LA Guns, Faster Pussycat kind of vibe, it doesn't. So tell us what Neon Coven was all about, and what's the status of that? Would you guys consider doing something more in the future?
Yeah, we have a show Friday in Vegas at Vamped. Well, the show will be over by the time this airs, but so the way that came about was really, really simple, man. We were on the Monsters of Rock cruise. Ace with Faster Pussycat and Me. That's my one vacation a year where I just go and just freaking watch the bands that I love. Don't play, don't do anything but run from one end of the ship to the next and just watch bands. I love it. And Anthony, the guy that sings, and I'm not the singer in Neon Coven, I'm the guitar player and keyboard player. Anthony, the guy that sings, was teching for LA Guns on the Monsters of Rock. April Lee, who's Larry's assistant, she walks up to us and kind of introduces us. Me and Ace are sitting there hanging out, and she walks Anthony up to us and she goes, "You guys are like the youngest guys on the ship. You guys look cool." She goes, "You're in a band now." And we all just kind of laughed. We're like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "You guys are my boy band that I'm putting together. You guys are a goth boy band." And we laughed and we hung out on the ship and everything. And then as soon as the cruise was over, Anthony texted me like 2 days later and was like, "Hey man, can we get together and write?" And I was just like, "Well, I thought this was a joke." And he goes, "Nah, man, let's do it." So we all got together and recorded an EP originally. And the whole thing is, it's, we were laughing about being a goth boy band, but it's like, man, I love new wave as much as I love rock. I was like, let's just do something that's just super Duran Duran meets freaking Nine Inch Nails meets, the Cult and the rock stuff that I like. And so we all got together and we did it and we have a good time. And we always joke that we're not a real band. We're just, because like we've never done a tour. We've just played a handful of shows, but we've recorded a couple of EPs, a couple of standalone singles, and then a full length record. Like when the pandemic hit in 2020, we just said, "Fuck it, let's do a record," and we did.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I like that stuff. Like you said, you named a few bands. I was thinking Bauhaus and stuff like along those lines.
Yep.
Tell us. Okay, so when I was looking over your resume, for lack of a better word, I saw some names on there that I just have to ask you about. Tell me about your work with Steven Adler. What was your involvement with him?
He was doing that. So Smokey Robinson, originally there was going to be a Smokey Robinson tribute album, right? And so the song started out, Randy Jackson put me on it, and the song started out, it was called "You Really Got a Hold on Me." And it started out, it was a duet with Bruno Mars and Steven Adler. And so I did the music. I played guitar and all that stuff. Eventually, Smokey, after he heard how everything was going, he decided he wanted to sing on this stuff and do duets with people. So awesome. It ended up becoming Smokey and Friends was the name of the record that's out. But yeah, I'm the guitar player, and so him and Steven were doing this thing. It was pretty cool.
Wow, our producer of the Talk Louder podcast runs monitors for Smokey Robinson.
Amazing.
Yeah. He just got back from a 6-week run with him or something.
I'm uncertain of that, but yeah, he stays busy with a real gig. But yeah, for the little like fly dates and stuff, Smokey does. Jared, our producer, is his guy, man. Hands him his mic all the time, make sure his ears are good. It's true.
Yeah. So did you spend any time with Tyler and Smokey, or is this just kind of you record the tracks and send them to him and they appear on the album?
No, you do it. You're in the studio and you spend some time and stuff like that, but it's nothing like where you become buds, like you're on tour and stuff. So many of the recording situations are like that. It's like when you're writing songs with artists, it's like you might have like a day set aside for writing, and the artist will come in and you'll write with them. And sometimes, like during COVID, you're trying to do it over Zoom, which sucks. Some people can do it. I didn't have a good time doing it because I feel like you can't catch a vibe over Zoom creatively trying to write something. Something like this is awesome. You can have a conversation over Zoom, but like if we were going to write a song, we would need to be in the, like with me, it's just, I'm going to vibe better if we're all in the same room and we're going back and forth on stuff and everything else. So, but usually a lot of the pop stars and all that stuff, like you might only know them for for 4 or 5 hours, and then have a massive hit together that's a massive hit for life. It's like, you just never know. And then there's other times, there's situations like what you just said, that you don't even meet the people. You just end up doing it.
What's the biggest hit you've had as a songwriter? Is there anything we'd know from a pop artist that is your baby?
I've been very fortunate, man. I've been very blessed. I don't ever talk about the pop stuff because, like, I'm a rock guy, and so I've always tried to not even have anything out there about being in the pop world for no other reason than I'm a rock guy. But
well, you're humble. You're humble because at first you're humble, even about your if you wanted to show us your feathers about your rock stuff, you're still humble even about that. So.
I am. I'm one of those people that I'm the worst at talking about myself, and I'm very conversational. But like, once I have to like talk about myself, like I just get I'm just the worst in the world. And just so you guys know, so after the whole Mick Mars thing came out, who the singer was and all that stuff, I've been hit up by every publication, every podcast, everything that you can think of, and I don't do interviews. Period. Like, period. I don't talk to anybody. I did one with Mick for my hometown paper. His manager asked me to, and then I did one with Don Jameson because he's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And then you guys are the third one, and you guys are the last one. I'm not doing any more interviews or anything because man, I'm a geek. Like, I'm a nerd. And
you're in the right place.
And I love music, but I hate talking about myself.
Right on. Right
on. That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
For the record, just so everybody knows, I mean, when we hit you up for this to be on this our little show here, I mean, it was very normal. Come to think of it, it's very normal because you had to wait a little while. It wasn't like, hey, come on and just hang out for a little while, which is what we do anyway. But I remember I asked you months ago, and you said that the rules are that you can't do it until this certain time.
February, the month that the record's going to come out.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing any at all. Like, I had this whole itinerary of stuff that I was going to do, and I'm not the guy.
Right.
Well, let me just say thank you for joining us then, because that's awesome. If you were kind enough and comfortable enough to spend some time with us, I appreciated you being on the show anyway, but now I really appreciate it because I didn't know this was not your comfort zone. So thank you.
Oh, no worries at all, man. It's like I've known Jason for a really, really long time. First as a massive fan, and then as a friend, and the conversations that we've always had have always been so easy, and it's always about music and our love for music and all that stuff. So I knew that it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, hold that thought, Dave. I was going to say, you brought up the cruise, and how you meet people and people you collaborate with now. You met them on the cruise. You met me on the cruise. The only time, just so everyone knows, I cherish the cruise because it's the only time that I get to see you. I don't bump in, I don't bump into you just on, hey dude, what's up? Let's have some coffee. No, but we bump into each other. Hey, on the cruise. And I think the last time we were, other than riding the elevator or seeing Michael Schenker together, it's just pretty much seeing you in the buffet line,
Yeah.
For a week we get to be neighbors, and it's pretty cool. But it's only that once a year, once every, biannual, that I get me some Jacob time. So
I actually got to see you at the Whiskey this year, which was cool.
that's
so I got to
right.
see you
That
twice.
was that's right. So
Yeah.
twice in
So
one
you love
year.
Sand Danger stories.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're too humble to talk about it, so I just wanted people to know that I know on your list of credits, the name Mariah Carey is also on that list. I know you've won an Emmy, not nominated, won an Emmy. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and say there's probably songs on the radio in the top 40 that people have heard that you probably have a hand in, and I'll
Yeah,
leave it at that.
I've been very blessed, and I've been very lucky. I'm like people ask all the time, like especially in the South, are you religious? Are you this or whatever? And I always tell people I'm very spiritual. I always give gratitude because of where I came from. Like I said, it was me and a single mom, poor as poor could be. And I know that life could have gone a lot different. And I feel very blessed. And I always tell people that this is going to sound preachy, and I don't mean it to sound preachy, but I always tell people, like, sometimes unanswered prayers are the greatest blessings that you can be given, because my whole life growing up in the South, everything is God and Jesus and all that stuff. It's like that's just how you're raised. And I would always pray every single night, like I want, cable, or I want video games, or I want the things that the kids have. I don't have anything.
Yeah.
And when I was 11 years old, I walked down from the projects that we lived in to the houses, and I mowed 3 lawns, and then went to the local music store that's still here in Birmingham, a place called Highland Music. I told the guy that owned the shop, I was like, I've got $60. I'm 11 years old. I want to play guitar more than anything in the world. Please sell me a guitar. He went in the back. There was a brand called Memphis.
Yeah.
The headstock had been broken in shipping. He super glued it back together, fixed it up really nice, set it up where it played really good, sold me the guitar for $60. I sat in my room and would just listen to the radio and flip through the stations and just learn anything that I could. That's the way that I learned to play. And because we didn't have money for everything that I prayed for, I had nothing but that guitar, which meant every day when I got home from school, I played until I went to sleep. Every morning I played. On the weekends I played. But to make a long story short, the whole unanswered prayer thing was the greatest thing that ever happened, because it forced me to become really good at crafting songs and everything that eventually led me to do all those things. And sorry to go on the rant, but
No, it's good.
Great.
But yeah, so and writing all those songs, song structure is song structure, whether it's pop music, whether it's rock music, whether it's whatever. An infectious melody is an infectious melody. So once I got into that world, to answer your question, yeah, I've been very, very, very lucky.
Man, I love that. A $60 guitar, and here we are talking about the guy who's on Mick Mars's record. That's crazy, man.
My second bass guitar was a Memphis.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
My first bass was a K. Remember that shit? K-A-Y? K.
Yep,
Yeah, I had an SG bass, was a K. And I had a Memphis, which ironically I had a bad car wreck. No one got hurt, thank God, but I flipped my first car and the headstock broke off of my Memphis. So you bought a Memphis that had the headstock glued back on.
Yeah.
I broke mine, had to glue mine back on. So
Steve I ruined mine. He broke it.
Your first guitar, Steve Vai had it? He played it?
No. What happened was I saw the Yankee Rose video, and he threw the guitar over his shoulder. So I went outside and threw my guitar over my shoulder, and it completely just broke, like beyond repair. So it's Steve I's fault.
That's hilarious.
I wanted to play a round of rapid fire with you, because I've seen pictures of you and your T-shirts are always super cool. You like a lot of the same music I like. So You can have only one: Danzig, the Misfits, or Samhain.
Only one?
Yeah.
Man. So it would have to be Danzig for me, just because the Lucifuge, Danzig 2, that second record is one of my favorite records of all time.
Mine's hanging on the wall back there that I had him sign it on that tour, and it is a masterpiece. I love that record.
Yeah.
Okay. Dead Boys or Lords of the New Church?
To me, Dead Boys.
Yeah. You've got a Stiv Bators vibe, and I'm sure this is about the 500 millionth time you've heard that. Do you ever get a call from Cheetah Chrome asking if you would front the revamped version of the Dead Boys?
No, I'd do it in a heartbeat, though. That'd be amazing. There's a photo of me in Seattle at a Neon Coven show. It was like the day before our show. We were at some club, and there was a poster of Stiv, and I'm standing right next to it. I got to find the picture and send it to you guys. We look identical. Like, the photo of me standing next to his poster is hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, you're a dead ringer for him, man. Yeah. Going back real quick to the Mick Mars stuff, was there any leftover material from those sessions that might surface as a second album? Is there any talk of a second album?
Yeah, I know that Mick is already writing. He's writing some every day, and he says he has, several ideas, on it. But as far as leftover songs, there was 2 that we did that we scrapped, and I don't think they'll ever see the light of day. They weren't up to par with the rest of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, someday somebody opens the vaults and says, "Look what we found." And
that's true.
This is kind of a layman's question, and with experience, of course, is my excuse as to why I know the answer. But in that situation where you have a couple of songs that, get scrapped or get held back, or what makes those songs not as bright and shiny as the others?
Good question.
Yeah, so like when you're just listening back, it's like everybody always gets excited about a song as they're writing it. It's like, that's why every single band that has a new record coming out, when you're reading their interview on Blabbermouth or whatever, they're talking about, this is the greatest thing that we've ever done. This is our greatest record. And then you listen to it, and it's like that movie, like where it's African Child, the movie Get Him to the Greek. It's the album that's just awful. Everybody's like, what in the world are these guys thinking? But they were excited at the time when they were making it, and you think that it's great. So with anything, once you walk away from it, and you revisit it in a month after you got, 4 or 5 other songs, and you realize, oh, this isn't so great. It just takes walking away from it for a little while to realize, the hook's not strong enough. The chorus isn't strong enough. This riff is too similar in style to something that we already have that is actually great.
Yeah. I would also venture to guess that there's sometimes when, and both of you guys could speak to this, there's probably times when songs get rejected because they don't fit the vibe or the flow of the album. They're not necessarily bad songs. They just don't belong on this album.
Absolutely.
They'll disrupt the flow or the vibe or something. They kind of stand out like a black eye or something.
Yeah. And then now there's other things that used to not be in the picture. Nowadays, I've actually had records, a lot of pop records, and even rock records. I wrote 5 songs on the last Quiet Riot record. And really, I wrote 6 songs on the last Quiet Riot record, but the label came back because the subject matter, everybody's so scared of getting canceled and how somebody can read into something that's something that never happened when I was growing up. You just wrote whatever the fuck you wanted to write. And it's like you got Guns N' Roses with It's So Easy. One of the lines in the song is turn around, bitch, I got a use for you. Besides, you got nothing better to do and I'm bored, or I've got nothing better to do and I'm bored. That kind of stuff, like a label would put their foot down now, and it's like, no, you might get canceled. It's bad on the label, all this stuff. So there's that aspect now that was never there before.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would have never thought. I mean, Jason could speak to that. I mean, would Sportin' a Woody be rejected by a label today, or would they think that was a hit?
That's a good. It's a good turn you're trying to make here, but I feel like Sportin' a Woody is like not It's So Easy. It's very very
for sure.
silly. It's a sillier, more of a ZZ Top slip inside my sleeping bag. You know, kind of a funny sort of a. Not to wear a crown, but you know, I'm trying to rip off Steven Tyler. You know, I'm trying to say something that he would say without saying, "Look at my hard dick." You know, kind of a thing.
That's not the song that would get rejected, but I guarantee you now a song like Bones in the Gutter, the lyrics to that, a label would come back to you. When you submit those lyrics to Bones in the Gutter, they're going to come back to you and they're going to ask you to change at least that one line about would I murder your mother or something like that. And it's like, and whether you do it or not, but somebody would when they're reading through the lyrics and stuff, they would be like, hey man, you might want to rethink this. And you know, I've seen artists and this works in the movies too, like it's movies, it's culture, it's music, it's everything. Everybody's so scared of offending people and how people are going to take it and getting canceled and all that stuff. I've seen people look at the labels, look at the movie studios and be like, fuck you, this is what we're going to do. More times than not, they're like, okay, and they rethink it and change it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's Bones in the Gutter would be the song that they would ask you to rethink over Sportin' a Woody.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point that you bring up.
Well, a lyric like "Did I murder your mother?" Dudes, I'm just trying to rhyme with gutter.
Right. I mean,
I can't use butter, you know.
Yeah.
And mutter is not even, hey, did I mutter your mother? It's a character. It's cartoony as fuck. And that would be my only argument to someone crying about some, you know, vicious remark.
That's one of my favorite songs on the record, man.
Dude, so, it's my favorite song on the record as well.
Yeah. Man,
it's a murder mystery. You know, it has to have that in there. The whole storyline of the fucking song is in that chorus right fucking there. So
right.
Yeah. And rap albums are getting put out every day with stuff like that on it. So
yep. That's a whole different topic.
Yeah. Jason, you got anything else for Jacob?
I'm giving you a hug, Jacob. Thank you for being here and just hanging out with us and being candid with us and having some fun. Appreciate it.
I get to see you in a couple of weeks, man. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, knowing that you don't do a lot of these. So that means the world to me and Jason, I'm sure. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being so open with us. And we wish you all the success with the Mick Mars record and anything else you do, even the pop songs that we'll never know about, but I know we'll hear them on the radio.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you, man. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, Jacob Bunton, on the Talk Louder podcast.